Mitsuko has thought of that mother with her dead baby ever since, every single day. She can't forgive herself for not trying to help her. Confusion reigns on the Miyuki Bridge that morning of the 6th of August. It is 3 hours since the bomb went off, and the wounded are crowding in, wanting to get across to escape the heat of the city center. When Yoshito Matsushige takes these 2 photos, no one knows the explosion was a nuclear bomb.
I don't remember who was there, yet I was standing there in the photo.
I wondered, why would this person be photographing such a terrible scene?
At that time, a man in national uniform with a camera in his hands.
Naturally, it felt strange to see a man with a camera.
I remember he asked me, what happened to Hiroshima?
So what really does happen that morning in Hiroshima, under the cloud? Witnesses tell us the wounded arriving at the Miyuki Bridge are parched with thirst. Some of them throw themselves in the river, trying to cool off and soothe their wounds, but exhausted, they drown. The ota fills up with bodies. While up on the bridge, in deathly silence, everyone just waits. But for what? That man in a cap in front of Mitsuko, what's he doing? Why is this man touching his feet? And this container, what's in it? And there, a man lifts his head, looking for something. He appears to have a shaved head. What is he waiting for? That is Mr. Tsuboi. He is the other person in the photo who's still alive. His testimony is precious because he knows exactly what everyone's doing there on the Miyuki Bridge. Mr. Tsuboi's face still bears the scars of the 6th of August 1945. He was 20 years old. On that day, he's just had breakfast with some friends and is walking along the street. When the bomb explodes, he's 3/4 of a mile from ground zero. The radiation burns his face. His back is bleeding, and he looks for medical aid. In the street, he sees one man holding his own intestines in his hands, another with his eye hanging out. In the face of all this horror, he gives up on getting to the hospital and heads for the bridge. According to Mr. Tsuboi, everyone on the bridge had come there to tend to their burns.
They'd brought rapeseed oil there. It's a cooking oil. You couldn't put it on everyone. So people were daubing themselves as best they could, with their arms in the bucket.
So that canister on the ground is full of oil, an emergency first aid remedy for burns. The man in the foreground with a cap and in uniform, Mr. Tsuboi tells us, is a member of the civil defense who'd been instructed to treat burns cases in this way. Further back, in a uniform of a lighter shade, another man from the temporary first aid post is doing his best at this thankless task. But there are just too many people, too many burns, and the precious rapeseed oil soon runs out. It's replaced with thick, dark sump oil, hastily appropriated from the nearby train depot.
They started using that because at least it was oil. They covered themselves in it, and their faces were getting all black. They really looked like monsters.
But it's not enough. Here in this makeshift hospital, some are simply running out of strength and starting to give up on life. Over to one side, a young girl is doubled over, her arms covered in dreadful burns, exhausted by the pain. And we can make out the legs of others who just lie there at death's door with no strength left to fight.
There was nothing more to be done. Those who were going to die died. The others kept on living.
There on the Miyuki Bridge, Mr. Tsuboi feels his end is near. His identity papers are all burned, so he's worried that if he dies, his body will never be identified, never return to his parents. As the dying people around him look on, he scratches a message on the bridge with a stone.
Thinking my life will end at 20. It was a lonely feeling. Thinking no one will help me, I wrote, "Tsuboi is dying here." Lonely. Maybe futile would be a better word. We were hardly capable ourselves of moving, so how could we do anything for those people there on the ground?
Those who were dying said, "Mother, Father," and then died. Many people died at Miyuki Bridge.
Many people came to the Miyuki Bridge in search of aid and of comfort. And many just came there to die. This summer of 1945, the children have been sent away from the city for fear of bombardments. The youngest ones were the first to go. Yet many of the wounded in Yoshito Matsushige's photos look like children or teenagers. Here, a young girl with long hair. Beside her, a boy with a shaven head. These girls and boys along what was the parapet, they're wearing school uniforms, surely. And back there, this boy, half naked and alone. What's he doing there? Did all Hiroshima's school kids meet up here at the bridge?
On the Miyuki Bridge, I don't remember who was sitting alongside me, but they looked like schoolgirls and boys. Maybe 7th, 8th graders, judging from their satchels. Most likely they were college students.
Mitsuo Kodama, who was 13 at the time, pays his respects to all the children from his class who never had a chance to grow up. The bomb goes off just half a mile from his school. Like all his classmates, he has terrible radiation burns and he faints. But the fact that there were schools back at Ground Zero doesn't of itself explain the large number of children on the Miyuki Bridge.
The kids a year older than me were off to work in the factories.
Japan is at war, and the men are all off at the front. Behind the lines, life goes on. From the age of 12 or 13, teenagers are drafted into all sorts of duties. The girls contribute to the war effort by working for the post office or as tram conductors. This August, though, Hiroshima's young are needed for a much more important and dangerous task.
To prevent firebomb attacks, buildings were being torn down and spaced out. So we were doing something that was totally useless.
These young people are working for the army now, retrieving stones from the buildings to build fire barricades. And swelling the ranks of young people scattered all around the hypocenter. In a radius of just over a mile from the blast, there are more than 8,000 of them.
Many students were mobilized. 60% of those within 1,000 meters of the epicenter, like myself, were killed.
For some years now, Professor Keiko Otani has been charting the age of the victims of the Hiroshima bomb. Her studies confirm the survivors' testimonies and the conclusions drawn from Yoshito Matsushige's photos. At Hiroshima on the 6th of August, 22% of the victims were adolescents, most of them between 13 and 14 years old.
When you see from this diagram that so many innocent children died, it drives home the awfulness of the situation.
On the morning of the 6th, 13-year-old Shioko Kuwabara is helping with the demolition work. She has a tummy ache and she's lying under a tree when the bomb goes off. With serious wounds to her face, she flees along with her classmates towards the Miyuki Bridge, where she finds a lot of other children.
We were still kids, so all we wanted was to go home. So we were only thinking about getting home.
On the bridge, the children don't know where to go, so they just wait.
I'll never forget what we went through.
Kuwabara is one of just a handful to make it this far unharmed.
It makes me cry when I think of them waiting there for their family to come to find them. I always feel so sorry for them.
The children's lives hang by a thread. It's not enough just to have reached the bridge. They're still in grave need of help. For the military, it's out of the question that Japan surrender. In the inferno that is now Hiroshima, their first priority is to save the vital resources to carry on the fight. The fire that's consuming the city is getting dangerously close to the Miyuki Bridge. For everyone fleeing the blaze, the bridge has in fact become the border between life and death. More and more victims of the blaze are starting to arrive. Eyewitness testimony has made it possible to reconstruct what's going on around the edges of Yoshito Matsushige's photos. It's an endless ballet of military vehicles. Relief efforts are being organized to get the burns victims to the hospitals that haven't been destroyed. Goro Takeuchi is a 22-year-old army cadet stationed in a suburb of Hiroshima. He sees a searingly bright light fill the sky and hears a huge, dull thump. Half an hour later, along with 100 other soldiers, he sets off to help evacuate the victims. When he gets to the Miyuki Bridge, he is shocked by the orders he's been given.
He ordered me to give priority to military men. Women and children were not important.
Children, women, and the elderly were considered weak, so only young men were allowed a ride.
In a deathly silence, and under the eye of the wounded waiting stunned on the bridge, the evacuation begins.
Young soldiers were still a valuable part of the war effort. And I think that's why this order was given.
To win the war required people who could hold a gun. Women couldn't shoot. So women and children were thought to be of little use and had to wait. They had to join the queue.
When I first received the order, I thought that made sense. But the situation at Miyuki Bridge brought me to my senses. I couldn't just rescue the military personnel.
In the midst of all the chaos on the Miyuki Bridge, everybody's trying to stay alive. A little girl goes up to a truck to beg for help.
I still remember his voice. It was stern and without compassion. It really scared her that he shouted at her, and she started crying. She was just a little thing. And then she rushed off.
Alone? No idea where she's going. The girl heads back into the blazing heart of the city.
There were flames everywhere, and I could see the whole city burning up. What happened to her? She died, of course. Even adults couldn't survive, so what hope was there for a little girl?